Welcome to another episode of Pilots Say What, where we get to hear what pilots have to say. And today we have a special guest, Jamail, and we've talked to you before,
Yep.
but this is our first time in person. So I'm really excited to maybe touch on some of those things we talked about before, and we'll also get into some updates about aviation start since the last time we talked. And I'm really excited because you last time, I mean, you shared so much knowledge, and I feel like I can barely keep up sometimes. So that's the kind of stuff I think our viewers really want.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to provide some additional value here today.
Exactly. Okay. Well, without any further ado, just to kind of get a little bit more context about you, is there? Could you give us a brief introduction?
I mean, the quick version of it is I'm a product of aviation outreach programs. I took my first flight when I was 12 with the Young Eagles program. I couldn't wait to meet U.S. regulations, so I ended up going up to Canada when I was 14 to fly solo up there.
Yeah.
Started flying aerobatics quickly. After that, became one of the youngest airshow performers in the country at 18.
Awesome.
And for basically the last 2 decades, I've been traveling around the country trying to get more people involved in aviation as the FAA's Ambassador for Aviation and Space Education.
And is that an initiative that they have and that you get to be a part of? Is that
So basically, they've given me kind of free reign to create unique opportunities and programs that can engage youth or midlife career changers and convince them that aviation's the industry that they need to be in.
I mean, that's so awesome and that's perfect. I mean, obviously we're trying to do that, but from a very business standpoint, right? But we bring a lot of people in who didn't
Yep.
know they wanted to fly, and then they love it, and we get them to closer to whatever they may be wanting to do, whether it be the airlines or not. Just to get a little more context, I'm gonna zoom out a little and ask you kind of like a more broad question about yourself. What's something that you feel like people should know about you in order to understand you? Something that kind of helps you feel comfortable around them.
I think the biggest thing is that I have pretty much been in most people's shoes that are getting involved in aviation, especially to fly for a living, become an A&P, things like that, because I got introduced by an aviation outreach program that gave me my first flight.
Mm-hmm.
My parents had no connection to the aviation industry whatsoever. And so I was lost. I didn't know the right way, what flight school I should go to, how to afford to be able to pay for flight training.
Mm-hmm.
All of those questions that the typical person that wants to get involved in aviation has.
Mm-hmm.
I've lived through it.
Yeah.
And now my goal is to create resources that makes it easier for people than what I had to do.
And that's really awesome. I think it's very similar to anyone who's already a CFI. Could probably
Yeah.
understand the idea that, well, look, I've kind of gone through a lot of these steps.
Yeah.
I love giving it back. I think navigating those difficult spaces, though, are kind of they go overlooked a little bit. I don't know. For me, I'm not great at participating in maybe the bureaucracy of things. And so knowing how to navigate those without any help, that makes a big difference.
I mean, it's a huge thing. Getting and making a career decision that, like, hey, I want to become a pilot or a mechanic is already a big decision to make. But then to try to figure out, what school should I go to? Do I need a college degree? What financing resources are out there? What people or organizations exist that might be able to provide some guidance as well as networking opportunities? That way, once my training's done, I have a potential job opportunity. Yeah. Those are all the things that we're trying to put in one place and make it a lot easier for people.
And I think that's so commendable. So. Look, I have a lot of questions about how you do that. I'm going to ask you one more question about yourself, and I want to know what people around you kind of describe you as, maybe friends and family. I want to know a little bit more about how they would maybe describe you too.
I hope they say a good time for the most part.
Yeah.
I like to have fun. I can be driven and definitely laser focused at times.
I love that. Yeah.
But I like to live in the moment.
Yeah.
Everything from flying aerobatics and flying air shows is one part of my personality, but spending a year on a research project is another aspect of it. So I'm pretty much across the board on most things.
Okay, that's great. That's great. And I like to ask that just to see, like, inside and outside of aviation. But it sounds like you're someone who is a good example of maybe did laser focus and maybe like use their obsession to kind of get them to a place of being able to help other people. And that's why I'm excited to talk to you.
I mean, I was a self-proclaimed aviation nerd for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to play Flight Simulator. I like to describe it as I was probably the first generation gamer out there. Hours and hours on Flight Sim.
Yeah.
And then after a couple years, I finally got the courage to write on an aviation chat room and say, I'm a 12-year-old kid that wants to become an airline pilot. Does anybody have any advice for me? And a Delta Airlines captain wrote me back and told me about the Young Eagles program, and I took the first flight, and it was over.
Wow, that's awesome. And so you get to help. So tell me a little bit more about how you're getting these sorts of opportunities in front of people who you think they may matter to.
So there's a couple things that we do. One
Hmm.
is the Dream Launch Tour. So around 2005, the FAA gave me the opportunity to start going into high schools all across the country.
Mm.
So to date, we've produced over 1,000 different events from Alaska to Florida, where we've gone into schools and we've just tried to give this pretty cool, unique presentation of me flying aerobatics, and then
Hmm.
also some other cool things that we've done,
Hmm.
and try to show there's a ton of opportunities, both fun as well as professionally inside of
Hmm.
the industry, that get their interest. And then we connect them with local aviation programs, just like the Young Eagles program, how I first started flying, the
Right.
Commemorative Air Force, for example. Some schools have AOPA's high school curriculum inside of their schools, which
Hmm.
is a really cool program.
And so I've had someone talk to me about that recently on the podcast,
Yeah.
that that's how they got interested.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
there's a lot of outreach out there, and
Hmm.
as we talked about it last time, we look at some of the stats for our industry, and it's scary to me because we have 83% of all the mechanics that are working inside of the industry scheduled to retire within the next 10 years. 50% of all the pilots that will be flying within a decade will be
Mm.
brand new to the cockpit, because a lot of people are going to reach that mandatory age retirement that we've always been talking about.
Right.
The FAA is looking at hiring 54% of its air traffic controllers within the next 4 years. So there's a lot of new bodies coming into
Hmm.
aviation, which is kind of scary, but it's a huge problem for those inside of the industry that are operating companies.
Right.
But it is a amazing opportunity for anybody that wants to get involved in aviation, because
Hmm.
the opportunity to grow and expand in whatever sector of the industry you want to get involved in
Hmm.
is like unlimited right now.
And so that brings two questions to mind, and I'll kind of just put them out there and see where this goes. But uh, y- I'm one thing that I want to know is, how do we expect that those needs to be filled, right? As is now, right? Are we on track, and what kind of how can we know? But also, I really want to know about the different sectors. So maybe we'll get back to the different sectors later, because there's so much to talk
Yeah.
about there. But what does it kind of look like filling those needs in the next 5 to 10 years?
Truthfully, I don't think we have the pipeline filled right now. I
Okay.
know if you go online, look at social media, or read Reddit,
Hmm.
most people are like, I can't get a job
Hmm.
this very second. Our industry is very cyclical. It's been that way for 100 years. That's
Hmm.
not going to change. So even though the airlines might not have the massive hiring spree that they had 2 years ago,
Hmm.
that's going to change within the next year. We're going to have more people that upflow is going to start happening again.
Right.
And, for anybody that's starting out right now, it's going to take you 2 to 3 years to really get the flight time to do it. By
Yeah.
the time that you're actually prepared to be able to be hired by an airline,
Hmm.
the demand's going to be there.
Wow. And so I want a little more context to even that, because we do hear that online. And we're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, there's a pilot shortage. There's not a pilot shortage,
Yeah.
right? There's always that conversation. What can you give maybe our listeners and our viewers that helps them, hear that you have a scope of knowledge around this, that kind of that says you can say that.
Well, it's not just me. For example,
Uh-huh.
you look at CAE, you look at Boeing, you look at most of the major players inside of the industry, they have paid researchers to do analysis.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the FAA pilot database,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very easy to see if someone's 60 and the legal mandatory age of retirement is 65, that
Mm-hmm.
means they can only legally fly for the next 5 years. And if you look at the ATP list of who's actually has an ATP license inside
Okay.
the United States, within 10 years, 50% of them have to legally stop flying for 121 carriers.
And this is public information.
Public information.
Gotcha. Do you what sort of gives you the idea that the pipeline itself isn't necessarily too filled?
Because, for example, 83% of all the mechanics that are currently working inside of the industry, we do not have the pipeline to be able to do
Oh,
that.
you
If
know
you
that
look,
one.
yeah, if you just look at
Yeah.
the enrollment rates at A&P schools,
Okay.
although it's starting to grow,
Mhm.
we don't have enough capacity just to replace all of those positions right now. So
Right.
you look at the FAA, air traffic controllers. FAA is doing a phenomenal job of being able to attract new controllers to get
Okay.
into the industry, but there's still training constraints. Everybody has to eventually go through Oklahoma City.
Mhm.
So even if you go to one of the CTI schools,
Mhm.
you still have to do part of your training in Oklahoma City, and there's only so many seats that are available per year to be able to do
Okay.
that.
And so, I mean, this is all it seems like this is obviously all public information that you can put together, and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, it's not that hard
People
to
just don't take
deduce.
the time to do it, but it's
Right.
all available to go out there and do it. I mean, literally the easiest one. I always like to say this when I talk to people and they're like, there's no jobs out there. And I'm like, you're just not looking at the right place. I
Yeah.
just came from the National Business Aviation Association convention in Las Vegas and flew right here. And the amount of opportunities that I saw there was insane, like, and
Mm.
really interesting and
Mhm.
inspiring, because not only for the legacy careers, like the 10,000 companies across the United States that own and operate airplanes, everything from Cirrus SR-20s up to G650s. There's a ton of pilot positions that are available there, but also on the maintenance side. And then we have the emerging market opportunities. We're talking about commercial space transportation. We're talking about unmanned aerial vehicles. We're talking about the powered lift or electric
Yeah.
vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. I mean, just there, we saw a new company called Auto Aerospace that is developing a new business jet that is completely like laminar flow, that's supposed to reduce fuel burn emissions by 60%.
Wow.
Compared to traditional business jets out there. They just signed an order for 300 new airplanes right before the show. So when you have all these orders being done, there's got to be pilots to be able to fly them. There's got to be mechanics to be able to fix them. There's got to be air traffic controllers to direct the national airspace system. There's got to be people that work at the airports to be able to fuel and service those airplanes whenever they land. The industry really doesn't have a huge opportunity, and I really do think that we're not prepared as an industry to handle that workforce crisis when it does happen. But then again, my biggest selling point that I talk to whenever I'm talking to somebody is the industry's problem is your opportunity, and you will be able to name your price. You'll be able to name your location as long as you show up prepared.
Right, and I think so. That's a good segue because we talk about going into schools and making sure that the representation of the
Yeah.
idea of the workforce is there, right? The career is there, and then you kind of get people to the stage where maybe they're a CFI already or they're approaching being a CFI, and as of right now, some will say things like, "Oh, I can't find a job," and you're like, "Hey, they're there. It's hard to get."
Yeah.
What do you think that disconnect is? Do you think it's a mental thing that maybe they're reading too much, or maybe they're just struggling? Like, what is that about?
So I think a lot of it is people are in this mindset that once you get 1,500 hours, you should automatically be able to be hired by a 121 carrier.
Yeah.
That's not reality right now. 2 years ago, it was.
Yeah.
I believe within the next 2 to 3 years, it very, very well may still be the case again. But in the meantime, why not explore some of these other opportunities that do exist? You can fly for air taxi operator. You can fly charter. You can fly corporate. There's a wide range of different opportunities. They even build time. Becoming a CFI is a great opportunity for people, but not everybody's meant to be a flight instructor. As we talked last time, there's three main reasons why I think people quit flight training. One is money. And not being able to have access to funds. Two is medical issues. And then the third is a bad flight training experience. I am a big believer, and if you are not meshing well with your flight instructor, it's time to get divorced and make a switch and find a new partner. And no other industry that you're involved in, if you're paying $5 a minute and you're forced to be in a 40-inch wide space with somebody for 40 plus hours, would you tolerate not enjoying being around that person? So the same applies for flight training. Now, it's not just on a flight instructor, it's also on a student. You show up unprepared, you can't blame your flight school, you can't blame your flight instructor for you not passing your next stage check or your written. That's on you. But if you're doing your job and you're not enjoying the experience, you have to make a switch, because there's a lot of opportunities out there, but having a negative experience with your flight school or your flight instructor will have a negative impact on your overall training experience.
And then and going into your career, it doesn't necessarily put you in the best probably state of mind either.
Exactly.
You should be building community, not like dreading talking to the main person who's going to teach you how to fly.
And that's one of the things that like I commend Thrust Flight for, because the community that you guys build among the students as well as the actual team here is pretty cool. And I hope that more flight schools will adopt what you guys are doing to be able to make that experience better for students.
And we do take that pretty serious, and it's not something you can force. You can't force a community or a culture to kind of happen. But I think what happens here is the CEO, Patrick Arnzen, he loves flying.
Yeah.
I mean, he like we talked about a little earlier. He has the game bird, and he loves the game bird. And we take the students up for the spin flights and things like that. So it's involved in school a little bit, but he loves flying, and I think he loves aviation. And I think that one way or another that trickles down a bit. And I think what happens is it attracts more people who really just want to love aviation.
Yeah.
And I think that's why our community is just really about that. It's not about when I talk to the CFIs and the students, I'm not a student there, but just talking to them on this podcast, I hear the passion and what they're doing, and that's the common denominator. And I can't help but to think that that's the reason for the community. So, anyways, I say that to say, I really think that people are missing out if they don't have any sort of community around something they love. That's all. Yeah. There was something else that you said in there that was really good, and you said you lived about thrust too. Excuse me, I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, but you also mentioned about switching, maybe switching who you're training with.
Yeah.
Some people are afraid of that. Maybe they blame themselves. They're like, oh, I'm not doing good, and I should be able to adhere to how this person works or whatever it may be. But I'm hoping they hear this and that they realize that there's other options. We might have talked about this last time, but what we call the finish line program, we have it to where now there's a little bit more of an easy entry into our program. Once you've started your private, you kind of can't get to that
Sure.
finish line, and we make it to where you don't have to necessarily start all the way over, and you can come get started with us. And that's just before we had to turn people away. It's like, hey, you have to start over or not. So now it's not so much that.
Well, it's pretty good that you take that kind of mid-training student that they're not forced to spend another $100,000.
Exactly.
You're giving them the opportunity to kind of assess where they're currently at,
Mhm.
and then figure out a training program that will get them to their ultimate goal.
Right, that makes sense. So you came back from you were in Vegas, right?
Yeah,
For the
I was in
NBAA.
Vegas. Did not make it to a casino at all, but I was on the show floor at the NBA convention for the past week.
Okay, gotcha. And can you talk a little bit more about the convention? 'Cause you were telling me earlier about how all the opportunities are, obvious there, and at least to you. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that convention?
Yeah, I mean, it's between 20 to 30,000 people that are involved in business aviation. So pretty much any professional flying outside of the 121 environment.
Okay.
You have all of the flight department managers, maintenance managers, as well as the line pilots and line AMPs that are there, as well as collegiate students that were coming out there from a lot of the University Aviation Association member institutions to Military Connect, which was a new program that NBA started this year. Okay. And under Military Connect, it's for military veterans that are leaving the service and trying to transition into the civilian world. And what we were doing with Aviation Start there was we started working with Signature Aviation this year on working on developing our aviation scholarship database that we talked about previously, where we compiled this massive database, the largest one inside of the entire industry, that has pretty much any known aviation scholarship that's out there into this one source. But previously, you had to go to the website and you just basically had to look through it and find a scholarship that you might potentially be eligible for.
Right.
Working with Signature, we were able to actually create an AI program that you answer some basic questions about who you are, your age, what you want to do, where you live at, things along those lines. And then it will search through the database and literally within moments send you an email report of all of the scholarships that you're eligible for. And then you literally have a button that you click and say apply now, and it takes you right to the landing page of that scholarship application. So we're trying to make it easier and make it where nobody has any excuses, no matter where they come from.
Right.
That if they have a goal of getting involved in aviation, they can make that become a reality. It's just up to them to click the button and make it happen.
And see, and that's why I'm really excited to talk even more about that. I kind of want to paint the picture here because before we started, you showed me kind of how it worked. You showed me the email of what kind of email you would receive that shows you here's all these opportunities to maybe get a scholarship to become an airline pilot or to become an AMT or anything like that. So let's go backwards a little bit with Aviation Start and kind of give. How would you explain that to someone on an elevator, what Aviation Start is?
So Aviation Start is the resource that if anybody wants to have a career inside of the aviation industry, they can go to. It's completely free. All you have to do is register to create a free account there. And if you have questions about all those things that I mentioned when we first started talking about I had questions of how do I start? What flight school do I go to? What career options are out there for me? How do I pay for it? All the questions that causes most people to get stuck,
Right.
we want to answer.
Right.
And then direct you with the resources. So whether it's local aviation organizations inside of your community, they help build your own personal community. Whether it's flight schools that we can kind of direct you to, whether it's scholarship opportunities, whether it's information for you to find out, salary trends, all that stuff. Just a free resource that you can find out anything about any segment of the aviation industry. We want to be able to help provide answers for people where they can have an easier start into our industry.
Is it aviationstart.com?
Aviationstart.org.
.org. Gotcha. Not com. Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay, great. Because I hear, you're talking about going to the schools and making sure that everyone's aware. And then you're talking about, okay, we can kind of get you there. Also help you get you there anyways. And then it comes to maybe getting a job at some point. It sounds like you're going to probably find yourself in that lane where helping people find the jobs. Also a resource there.
We've got a lot that we're planning on being able to build, like literally become a one-stop shop for people to be able to find free information that will be relevant and valuable for them to be able to make a successful career in aviation. I, once again, think there's a ton of opportunities here, but there are some complexities with aviation. How to navigate the medical process in case you had any issues in the past. ADHD medication is a big topic for a lot of young pilots today, but there's ways to overcome it. We can connect you with organizations like AOPA and the Pilot Information Center, where you should actually talk to someone like that before you go for your first medical appointment, just where you can figure out how to properly disclose it, where you won't get onto that deferral list with the FAA, because that could be a 1 to 2 years process that will slow you down. And if there is a simple way that you could disclose that beforehand and still be truthful, but do it the right way and not have to go through that process, that's the type of stuff that we want to help prevent people from falling into those type of traps.
I think we've had I think 2 of the people we've worked here and that have helped us with admissions and kind of like student enrollments and things like that. They wanted to make sure they found a job within aviation because they had deferral issues for the same reasons. And they're still going through the process, and it looks like things are going to work out, but it's a process.
It's definitely a process.
Yeah. But even if you just zoom out a little bit, I guess one thing I want to know is it sounds like Aviation Start's sort of your baby, probably.
Yeah. It's a passion project for sure.
Exactly.
It's not here to make money, but it's here to actually be able to hopefully help the industry.
Right. And that's, I guess, you already said why you want to do that. I guess I'm trying to figure out what it is I want to know more about it, because there's something about your connection to it that I really like. It's the way you talk about Aviation Start, and it sounds like you genuinely do want to have it as a resource for people. And so I'm wondering, is there a different vision or a vision that you have in the future for it, to kind of what's the vision you have for it?
So as I mentioned, I want it to be the place that, like, if you tell your teacher, you tell your guidance counselor, you tell your parents one day down the road, I thought about becoming a pilot, a mechanic. I want to work in airport operations. Like, I just love being around airplanes or aviation. That they're going to tell you, go to Aviation Start, read through it, because it's going to answer all your questions and help you identify not only a career, but the resources to be able to make that career happen. That's my ultimate end goal for what Aviation Start will hopefully become.
Okay.
We've already started off with the financial resources. We've already created this database for organizations. Included in that initial email with the scholarships, if somebody uses our AI program, it also matches people up with aviation organizations that might be helpful. So say you're in high school and you decide, I want to become an A&P. It might connect you with local aviation organizations, like maybe your local EAA chapter, where you can join and maybe become friends with someone that's building their own airplane. And imagine getting hands-on experience of helping somebody build an airplane while you're in high school or in college, and experience what that real A&P life is all about. Or if you want to become a professional pilot, it might connect you with local flying clubs. It actually, with the AI software, has the capability of helping you decipher what type of route, what organizations will be good for you, what scholarship programs you should apply for if you have that need for it. And down the road, I really want to build kind of another version of the AI program where you could say, I'm Zachary, I live here in Texas, and I want to become a pilot, but maybe you can't do a full-time program. It might connect you with a 61 program. But if you can afford to be able to dedicate 100% of your timing, it might tell you to come to thrust flight training, and then it'll also maybe connect you with the scholarship opportunities that you might be able to, or you might need to be able to make that dream happen.
Right.
So really just imagine being able to say who you are, what stage of your life you're in, what your constraints are, and then it help you create a roadmap to go from wherever you're currently at to actually hopefully being hired one day in that dream job in aviation.
I love that, and I love that idea. I would love things like that.
Yeah.
I'm an ambitious, driven person, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes a little direction goes a long way.
100%.
Yeah. I still want to ask you. I'm going to ask you a little bit more about other career opportunities
Sure.
outside of 121 and things like that. But I still want to ask about Aviation Start, because there's going to be people. I'm sorry. There's going to be people who hear this or watch this and think, okay, is it really that easy? So I kind of want to go down this little rabbit hole a little bit and say,
Yeah.
okay, I go to aviationstart.org and I see what.
You see a landing page that just says, we're here to help you get involved in aviation.
Okay.
You create a free account.
Okay.
There's no credit cards, no nothing like that.
Okay.
We're not asking for phone numbers. We just have to register an account. You register for your account, you log in, and you click on the scholarship database like how I showed you, or the AI program. Literally type in a few details on who you are.
And I saw that. It was like literally a few details.
Yeah, and then in a couple of moments, you'll get your email. Okay. If you don't see it in your email, it probably went to your spam folder, so check that. But outside of that, you'll see this folder or this email, and it'll have all of the scholarship opportunities. It'll give you aviation organizations that you might want to check out for additional resources. And then, like I said, a few versions down the road, you'll be able to get literally a full career roadmap on, I'm a high school student and this is the roadmap for you, but it'll give you a different roadmap if you're a 35-year-old midlife career changer, and you decide that you want to get involved in aviation and you can't go full-time, or maybe you can go full-time. It'll give you answers based off of who you are and what your particular situation is.
Right.
All for free.
And I saw that email, and I would love a list of things that you go through. I love like when you have a list of apartments when you're moving, or a list of homes or wherever, and you're like, oh, I can just check each one off the list and see which one I like and narrow it down.
Kind of like the Zillow of, I guess, aviation.
Exactly. I love that. So if someone knows that, okay, now there's tools there to help me kind of do this. Let's say that they're just now finding out that aviation might be something they're exploring their interest. What on Aviation Start actually helps them explore their interest?
So there's a couple. We partnered with a variety of pretty much most of the aviation outreach programs out there. We can connect you with, getting your first flight with the Young Eagles program. We can connect you with the Commemorative Air Force that has squadrons all across the country. I love CAF for a couple reasons. One, they really are dedicated to not just preserving the history of like World War II airplanes, P-51s and B-17s. Yeah. But it's a cool opportunity to meet pilots, a lot of professional pilots and mechanics throughout the industry, gain a ton of knowledge about them while you're flying or being around really cool airplanes and really cool experiences. So I'm a big fan of that. But in addition, like how I mentioned, AOPA's high school program, they're currently in over 1,400 schools all across the country. Over 29,000 students are participating in the AOPA high school program. So imagine being in high school and getting a chance to work on a Redbird flight simulator as a legitimate part of your classroom instruction. And then also getting prepared to be able to take your private pilot written exam by the time that you graduate. I think it's a cool resource. I wish I would have been able to do it because it would have been free training again. So all these opportunities that exist, we can connect you for whatever age level that you're at. And that's really, once again, we want to be the first stop that people can go to, find out what opportunities exist for them, not just scholarships, but resources where they can build their own individual community before they can be successful in aviation.
And I can imagine how that can help be so helpful. People tell me how they've found their way into aviation. It's in so many different ways. But I think I didn't know anything about any aviation careers when I was in high school, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. But I knew that I'm not necessarily the best person to be sitting behind a desk.
Yes.
And I'd like to interact with people, and I like to be a little hands-on. And I like to move around. So I can imagine that more people need to hear it regardless. So I am going to ask you though about those different careers. But what's your favorite part of aviation? Is actually something I want to know.
I like to live in the moment,
Yeah.
and that's a combination of things. It could be like going to air shows, it could be going to NBA conventions,
Hmm.
but it boils down to people and experiences, really.
Hmm.
Flying airplanes are awesome, but it's a tool to be able to get to the next person, the next convention, the next air show,
Mm.
the next experience, bottom
Hmm.
line. And I think for me, aviation is all about experiences. That typically includes people. That typically includes being able to fly an airplane, whether it's upside down or seeing a new site that I've never seen before, a new city,
Yeah.
seeing the sunset over the coast. There's so many different cool memories that I can think of off the top of my head, but being able to involve people into those just makes it 10 times better.
Yeah, and I think that's something I hear from a lot of the
Yeah.
pilots, and I don't think I understood that at first. That people and
Yeah.
experiences, but
Yeah.
of course, people is a big part of it. Uh,
And
and
the
so,
people in aviation are pretty cool overall.
yeah, yeah. Actually, yes. I'll tell you one thing. A lot of these people I may not have ever really talked to. Like a lot of the people at Thrust, I may not have come across them or even talked to them in any other scenario.
Yeah.
But I think I get along with everyone so well,
Yeah.
and I think that's to me that's very telling.
I like the
So
community. The aviation community, as you mentioned earlier on, typically it's very supportive.
yeah.
Um, you know, it's one of the few industries that you could have someone that has maybe 5 hours of flight time,
Uh-huh.
and they could go talk to, a 10,000 hour pilot, and that 10,000 hour pilot's going to probably take the time to tell them about their experiences, to
Mm.
give them advice, to be able to help provide some guidance. The biggest thing is people just have to take the initiative to ask the questions and try to create the relationships. So I'm huge. You'll see me a lot of times talking about the importance of networking inside of aviation,
Mhm.
finding mentors, and getting involved. I think a really cool thing that a lot of people miss out on opportunity
Mm.
is to volunteer at some of these aviation events, whether
Mm.
it's an air show, whether it's a convention.
Mm.
You'll get the chance to interact with decision makers on a
Mhm.
regular basis if you just become part of the community.
Mhm.
And that will create opportunities, i.e. job opportunities. When there is going to be, those ups and downs inside of our hiring cycle,
Mhm.
the person who's been engaged in some of those different conventions or has
Mhm.
been engaged in their local regional aviation association, they're going to be the ones that are going to know who might be hiring first,
Right.
because they're going to be interacting with those hiring managers. And if you do a good job, your name's going to go to the top of the list versus a blank resume that just
Mhm.
came in.
I think it's easy to hear what you're saying and think maybe, oh, I don't think I can like network like that.
It's
Someone might,
so easy.
yes, and I guess I can understand that thought process, but I guess I would just like to add in there that I think maybe don't think about the big picture all
Yeah.
at once.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like if you know you're interested in something, sometimes getting involved at like you said maybe a local convention or
Yeah.
something like that can go a long way because there's no commitment to that.
Yeah.
You go there and maybe you don't talk to anyone the whole time because you don't feel like it, and that's
Yeah.
okay. But you're in position to though, and I think that's the biggest thing is putting yourself in position.
And I mean, pretty much any city across the country, you have a local aviation organization of
Hmm.
some sort that could likely be helpful for your aviation career.
Hmm.
So, my biggest thing is, once again, we put as many of the known ones that we can possibly find on one free resource that you can go to,
Yeah.
access it, find the opportunities that are in your local area and take advantage of it
Right.
and get involved, meet pilots, meet decision makers, and just get your feet wet inside of aviation.
What if someone and I think this might be one of my. There's probably a lot to talk about with aviation start because last time we talked a lot about it too. If you guys haven't listened to our last episode where we got to talk with Jamail, he remoted in, so it was like you got to be on the phone with us
Yeah.
throughout the podcast, but it went well. Guys should go definitely listen to that. There's a lot of information in there. Because around the same time we did something with Kit Darby,
Yes.
and we went in a deep dive there, and I think a lot of people got a lot out of that, and those were in close proximity in time.
Yeah, they were
So,
pretty close, and surprisingly enough, Kit lives in Atlanta, where I live at,
oh
where I call home too. But
yeah,
speaking of that, he does some really interesting research on the 121 world.
mm,
I like to point out that even though there is a major commitment inside of aviation, especially on the pilot side,
hmm,
you're looking at 100 to up to $150,000 at some places
yeah,
to be able to get that time that you need to become proficient and safe to become a professional pilot.
Mm-hmm.
His most recent survey showed, the lowest paying airline job out there right now over a 35-year career is just shy of $11 million in your annual career or annual career earnings, where the top earnings is close to $22 million. So
you're talking about like over a 35-year
over
span?
a 35-year career on average. If you work
Wow.
at Allegiant, you're going to make just shy of 11 million. If you work at Southwest, the highest paying airline, you're going to be just shy of $22 million over that 35-year career. So $100,000 investment can translate to the average pilot for them making $22 million a year.
And this is where the opposite effect of not looking at the big picture is not necessarily what you should do. I think I say this because that sentiment again online, where some people are maybe a little worried about the workforce when it doesn't seem like you really need to be if you're only if you're thinking about it a little bit bigger. Though, if you're thinking about 1 year from now, 2 years from now, it's still probably fine.
Sure.
But if it's much more clear when you think to yourself, what's it gonna look like? What's it gonna look like if I train to be a pilot? Will I at some point get a job?
100%.
You know what I mean? And then over a period of time, how much am I gonna make? It kind of makes it really more simple sounding.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that you have to do. You have to be prepared, show up, and do your job. Obviously, barring those just standard assumptions being met that you're a decent candidate, it's a productive career. And even outside of the airline environment, like we were talking about, there's 10,000 companies that could have anywhere from one pilot to like 10 pilots on their corporate flight departments. There's even some more various different things, all the way down to the crazy people like myself flying air shows. There's so many cool piloting experiences, but there's even more jobs out there outside of the cockpit. You look at things like airport operations. Airport operations is a gateway career. You could pretty much go to any airport and get a job in airport operations, from a mom and pop FBO all the way up to chains like Signature Aviation. The opportunities exist. People just need to know where to look to find them, and then be willing to take advantage and make it happen.
And you're making a lot of those steps easier, it sounds like.
Yes, that's the goal, man.
That's the idea. Okay, so I really did want to ask you about what do you get out of this, or what does Aviation Start get out of this? If someone's thinking like all this free stuff is help, what do you want? You know what I mean? That's what it's hard not to think that way, especially from maybe like younger generations. Sure. You're online. It's so much. There's ads. I'll give you this, but as long as you give me your social security number, I'll give you. But so I guess on the back end, what do you get?
My role as when I accepted the opportunity to serve with the FAA as their ambassador for aviation and space education is literally to get the next generation involved in aviation. So if I do that, I'm doing my job. Wow. And I'm also having an impact on the industry, and that's what I want to do.
Gotcha. And so in the FAA, I think it's pretty clear at this point, but just to be clear, what do they get out of this, right?
Well, there's a couple of different things you get. In general, workforce development isn't just about getting pilots and mechanics and airport operations people there. It's about the entire United States economy.
Right.
The opportunity for you to go travel to California or wherever to go see family, go on vacation, conduct business won't be as readily available if we don't have capacity inside of the system. Our way of life that we have come accustomed to today, such as that overnight package delivery from Amazon, won't happen if we don't have airplanes flying around. So the way that humans and Americans have become accustomed to the way of life today doesn't really exist without a strong aviation industry. So what happens by the FAA and industry stakeholders investing and developing the next generation of aviation is one, obviously it's beneficial for them as a company, as an industry, but it also maintains the way of life that we have. And that's part of the FAA's responsibility for safety, as well as making sure that, we continue to live life the way that we have come accustomed to living life every day.
Right. And aviation plays such an important role in the infrastructure of our way of life that we that we may not notice. I think that you being able to talk about the different kinds of jobs that you got to even just see in the NBAA speaks to that. So let's say someone is interested in aviation and they're not really sure about anything other than becoming an airline pilot. Um, could you maybe what top 5 things that stand out to you
I
in
mean, like at
aviation?
NBA,
Yeah.
there's just so many even outside of the cockpit. Yeah, you can
Yes.
become that pilot, but think
Mhm.
about who designed the airplane. So the aeronautical engineers that actually design it, the
Mhm.
paint and interior designers that actually developed it,
Mhm.
who installed the carpets, the seats, all that type of stuff are real legitimate jobs, careers, as well as people that are developing companies
Mm.
to be able to do that. Who fuels the airplanes? Who insures the airplanes? Who
Mhm.
designs the navigation databases that go into the
Mhm.
airplanes?
Mhm.
The technological advancements, the AI stuff that's coming
Right.
out in aviation is really interesting. And I think it's going to improve efficiency inside of the National Airspace System.
Mhm.
I also think it's going to improve safety. Um, the, the aircraft sales aspect of it. There's
Okay.
so many different job opportunities that we don't think of on a
Mhm.
regular basis. We know the sexy job is becoming an airline pilot, making $22 million over a 35-year career.
Right.
But there's so many other jobs outside of the cockpit,
Mhm.
and the easiest gateway to get involved is working in airport operations at your local airport, which a lot of places you can start doing while you're in high school.
Yeah. Okay. People who are interested in, and this isn't even that far left field. This is very closely related to the airlines, but um, let's just say I'm sorry, the charters and the corporate pilots. Can you talk to me a little bit about that before we go into some of these other ones?
Huge growth. I mean, if you look at the as I mentioned, Otto, which is a brand new airplane,
Hmm.
they just signed a 300 airplane order with FlexJet, for
Hmm.
example, which is a fractional ownership program,
Hmm.
the second largest fractional in the entire country.
Right.
The fact that they just signed 300 airplanes, if you think about the amount of pilots that are needed for that,
Yeah.
they're not just hiring 2 pilots because you have to be able to maintain and crew that airplane. So they're probably, and I don't know the numbers for this exactly, but I would imagine you're at
Hmm.
least 6 pilots per airplane.
Hmm.
So that's 1,800 pilots just for that one company
Right.
and that one aircraft transaction. You look at NetJets, and then you look at some of the smaller players. You look at all the
Mm.
135 operators all across the country. There's a ton of need for all aspects of the industry.
Mm.
And there's some really good ways of getting involved, even if you don't know where to start.
Hmm.
And that's what we're trying to do.
And do you have a good idea of what that like? Do you have the ability to kind of paint an image of what that sort of work life looks like? Because I don't know if everyone understands that necessarily, and maybe I don't either. But yeah, I just want to know, like, why would
So
someone do that?
it varies depending on which company that you go to. On the business aviation,
Hmm.
there's some pros and cons to it.
Hmm.
One of the pros of working for the airlines is that you typically are going to be flying to probably about 50 different airports your entire career, and that's it.
Hmm.
With business aviation, you're going to be probably flying to a different place wherever that corporation or that business has a need to be able to go to and
Right.
respond back quickly, things along those lines. So you have 5,000 plus different airports that
Hmm.
you might be flying to, and
Hmm.
that's just here inside the United States. So
Yeah.
one of the cool things that I like about business aviation is the fact that the variety of the places that you go, the people
Hmm.
that you meet, the experiences that you have are going to definitely be a little bit more unique on the
Hmm.
business aviation side. But there's also some trade-offs. With the airlines, you do have kind of more of a predictable schedule.
Hmm.
You can still get that with the larger fractional companies and the larger flight departments inside of the United States on the business aviation side. But if you go work for a very small Part 91 operator, you could be on call 24/7.
Yeah.
So it just varies depending on what size of the company that you go work for. But a lot of the larger corporations offer a very similar kind of pay structure as well as
Mm.
schedule structure of what the 121 environment looks like. So it's
Are there and then we hear about this, right? Are there minimum requirements that are outside of the company's requirements
yeah,
for
I
these
mean,
that
a
are the
lot of it's
same or
going to
different?
be insurance based.
Okay.
Just like even if you become a commercial pilot and you have that 250 hours, they're
Yeah.
probably not going to put you in a G5.
Yeah.
But barring that, it's really cool because I do know some really low time pilots that have done a really good job of networking and making their name known. And they've gotten the opportunity to get right seat time, starting to fly in a King Air or a Citation or a Lear. And
without 1,500 hours.
Without 1,500 hours and being able to do it.
Not that you have to.
Now, the people that have been able to do that are the people that actually take the initiative and get involved inside of the aviation community. They're meeting people, they're engaging, and they're showing up prepared.
We kind of went past it earlier, but you mentioned the expectation sometimes seems to be that I have 1,500 hours, I can get a job now, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, to give me the job.
Yeah.
And it's still a job force. It's still something to compete for on some level, no matter what. And can you kind of paint a little bit more of a, if you wanted to correct that mindset a little bit, what would you say?
I mean, even though there's a huge need that we're going to definitely have over the next decade, I don't believe that there's any numbers that dispute that. At times it's going to be easier and sometimes it's going to be a little bit harder. Yeah. Right now we're in that stage where it might be a little bit harder. Although we are starting to see some uptick. I was just talking to a couple of airlines at the University Aviation Association about 3 weeks ago and hearing that they're actually starting to hire again. Now it's going to be trickle amounts in the very near future, but that's going to continue to grow. But in the meantime, if you want to find opportunities to get a paying job in aviation, they do exist. They may not exist in the 121 world. Look inside of the general aviation world. And the best way to do that is to get engaged inside of the community again. I know it sounds like it's not that easy, and I don't want to paint the picture that it's simple where you just show up and your very first convention you're going to meet the head of some corporate flight department and they're going to offer you a job on a Challenger. That's probably not what's going to happen, but you will get the opportunity to meet those people, develop relationships, properly network, and those opportunities will present itself. So my recommendation to people is start networking and start doing that part of your job research before you get ready for it, entering a job market. So as soon as you decide that you want to get involved in aviation, I highly recommend that you start developing those relationships. So in a year to 2 years, when you're prepared and ready to take advantage of that job, you've already have the relationships established. You already have built up your reputation with whoever it is that you want to get hired by. And, you know, it's as simple. One of the cool things, like we talked about with aviation again, if you're a new pilot and you're trying to build that relationship, it's as simple as sending an email to a pilot or connecting with someone on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram and say, hey, I saw that you fly XYZ. Would you mind showing me the airplane? What pilot is not going to take advantage of the opportunity to talk about flying and airplanes and then show some newbie the opportunity of this is what you could be in a couple of years? But after you do that, keep that relationship alive, continue to grow it, stay engaged. And then when you are ready in a year to 2 years, you'll be surprised what opportunities might present itself.
And that's another thing you mentioned earlier too about you know, there's not many industries where, and I think there's a cool picture to paint here because there's not a lot of industries where someone who's a low time experience can sit here and talk to a 10,000 hour, you know, person in that industry. And just to be a little more clear here, you know, there's the talk about 10,000 hours is mastery, right? You know, there's always talk about those sorts of things. Me, if I want to, you know, make a movie, I can't go talk to Quentin Tarantino. You know, I mean, maybe I can, but you know, I can get involved. I can go. He's probably on a speaker panel. Maybe I can, you know, but things like that. It's not. You can't message him, you know, on Facebook, and you might be able to message a 10,000 hour pilot on Facebook.
You could pretty much do that, and even if you can't message him, I guarantee you, if you show up at the airport, I mean, there's not that you want to become a stalker in 2025,
right?
But there's a ton of ways that you can get the opportunity to meet people, and I can almost assure you, as long as they don't have a passenger waiting to take off, no pilot is going to turn down an opportunity to talk about airplanes, talk about flying, how they got to where they're at. We all enjoy doing that. I mean, that's why I'm here today. As a perfect example. So if you have a sincere interest in learning from them, you're going to find a pilot that's willing to kind of share their experiences and utilize that as an opportunity to build a relationship.
Yeah. And what's that statement? you'll know someone's a pilot because they'll tell you.
Yeah, that's 100%
Yeah.
true for sure.
Yeah, and I've been hearing that a lot. I've heard that a lot now. But I think recently, I think that statement was stolen from vegans. Apparently, maybe pilots outdo the vegans.
That's possible. I still like meat, so I'm not 100% sure.
You're right.
But
I have friends though, and I know they're a vegan.
yeah,
But that's a joke that was always made. I guess it's just interesting to hear that that's how far the passion goes. You don't necessarily have to. There's not as much opportunity to get bored in aviation as there might be in another career path. So I hear that a lot. I want to try to continue painting the picture of the industry because I think we've been doing that a
sure.
bit, and I like that. There is sort of maybe sectors within aviation, right? Like you were talking about. There's the airlines, there's AMTs, there's operations. So could you kind of paint a picture there at all? It's kind of a hard task. It sounds like.
So, I mean, we have a massive ecosystem inside of aviation,
Right.
but in each one of those, inside of that massive ecosystem for aviation, there's different subsections. You have the 121 world, which is all commercial aviation. That's probably the biggest one and the sexiest one that most people think about.
Right.
Both for the pilots and the mechanics and even airport operations side on that. But I think general aviation is so much more diverse because it's pretty much anything excluding commercial aviation and the military.
Okay.
But within that, I mean, you have everything from entry level jobs of working at a FBO to getting slightly more advanced, but still entry level jobs in the piloting side, such as anything from towing banners to flight instruction to then getting a little bit more advanced at working at a corporate flight department, then maybe a 135 company, then maybe a fractional company. And each one of those different sections have pilots. They have mechanics. They might even have dispatchers or schedulers.
Right.
They have line guys. Like, there's a ton of opportunities within the major overall arching aviation ecosystem. It's kind of hard to but just think of it as each one of those sections has a full community within it or a full operating city within it, where you have to have each one of those parts to be able to keep it flowing and operating properly.
I see what you're saying. And it seems like those little parts. I guess that's probably even more of what it is that I think people may not understand. Is let's maybe we can even paint a picture of. Let's say there's a corporation and it involves a lot of last minute meetings, and so they have their jet and they have probably 4 people who need to go all over the country twice a week. And what does it kind of look like to make that happen?
One of the most frugal companies in this world, Walmart, operates one of the largest fleets of corporate jets out there, out of Bentonville, Arkansas. And the reason why they do that is because they can take 4 to 5 people, managers, to go visit a store in whatever city it is. They can do 2 to 3 different cities in one single day and then still be able to be back home. So they provide their employees with a decent quality of life experience, but they're able to hit enough stores that they would never be able to do that on a 121 schedule.
Right.
And then also because some of their stores might be in remote cities, the flexibility that it provides for them is outstanding. And NBA has this tool that they actually can allow you to calculate if it's cheaper to go on the airlines, or if you're actually, when you factor in the actual salaries of what you're paying somebody, say if you're able to add an extra 60 days a year for 4 different executives of being inside of the office versus being stuck in a commercial airport waiting for their next airline flight, you actually do save money in the long run or the big picture of something. So operating corporate airplanes is not just the tool of it being, an extravagant waste of money.
Right.
Obviously, Walmart wouldn't be utilizing a fleet of airplanes to do it. They're
not trying to be extravagant.
Yeah, it's just a necessary business tool. And there's a lot of other companies that do utilize that. And because of that value proposition, that creates opportunities for those of us who want to work inside aviation.
And you've mentioned it before. I feel like we can keep saying it probably, but there's so many people who are going to work on that plane that flies, even if there's just one per company. It's going to take a crew to run it and to keep it in the air and to keep it maintained and to maybe like schedule it. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. I guess I just keep
as well as, painting the airplane, as well as redoing the interior on it.
exactly.
The certifications for the paperwork on that stuff, maintaining the maintenance schedules for the airplanes. There's companies that just specialize in keeping track of making sure the airplanes are legally able to fly. There's so many opportunities, and it's a real ecosystem. It's a city basically that has to operate. Is what aviation is.
I found that so interesting, and we're trying to do a good job here of getting so many different kinds of people on the podcast. We've had ATC controllers, and we've had I can't remember that gentleman, but it seems like he like ran the whole plane. I don't know what his title was, but before we moved to this office, we were sharing like a hall with some people who were basically the overseer of the corporate jet that was in that hangar over there. And so they had to make sure, it was scheduled right. We typically
call them managers.
Managers, I guess. Maybe he was a jet manager. Yeah. But I got to, talk to him here and there. I got to hear some of his calls. And I think one of those guys we had on the podcast. But the idea of, being around that gentleman was seeing all the different people he brought in. I got to see people come and clean the plane. I got to see people come and work on the plane. I got to see people come paint the plane. I got to see people move the plane. And him schedule. I got different pilots coming in there. We got people who maybe installed something like a snack thing in one of the planes. But the idea is that there's so much that revolves around it.
Yep.
And I guess I just, we'll keep hammering that in, but there's so much to do.
Yes.
I almost got one of my friends like a job, just cleaning.
Exactly.
So it was pretty fun. Okay, let's rewind a little bit. There is someone out here who is wondering what they're going to do next, and maybe they want to consider aviation. What's the first thing maybe you would suggest they do? And it's probably obvious.
The very first thing I'm going to tell them is go to Aviation Start.
Okay.
And then find some of the aviation organizations that are out there that pique your interest. So no matter if it's the commercial side, corporate side, the fun flying side of aviation, there's some aviation organization that can give you a little bit of guidance. Recommend reaching out to one of them. Go to a first meeting, explore it, meet some people, see if that actually is something that you're interested in. And if it is, find some scholarship resources or financial resources for you to be able to do that.
Okay.
And then get involved inside of the industry. The last part is the most critical part of getting involved, engaging in the community, meeting people, and then letting your interests be known. Because you will be surprised how many people inside of the aviation community will take interest and do their best to be able to help you succeed.
And it's not just you're not just saying that because I've seen it now. Yeah. And I used to think that people were just saying that when they're like, "Why would anyone help me? I'm not giving." But it's a little bit different, I think, than a lot of
for
other
whatever
industries.
Reason we're weird and we like to get more people involved inside of the community.
Yeah, and so one thing I liked about asking you that question though is I asked that question to pretty much all my guests, right? Like, what would you say? And it's usually coming from a very specific perspective of becoming a pilot or even an airline pilot. So it's like, hey, call a local flight school and ask for a discovery flight, which is a great place to start if you're thinking about being a pilot. But just more open-ended wise, get involved regardless, whether it is taking a discovery flight, whether it is taking a tour of a school or working at an FBO or something like that. And so I like to stick on that. Is getting involved really goes a long way. And it feels like a lot of people kind of skip that step.
Yeah.
Because, that's okay. But it seems like there's a lot to gain from adding that step in there.
Because you get that tunnel vision, and then you might miss out on all the other segments of the industry that you might actually fit better in. You might hear about becoming a pilot, and that sounds cool to you. But maybe working at an airport might be even a better fit for you. Or, selling airplanes might be a better fit.
And maybe working at the airport will get you exposed to either or of those, and you decide then.
And, it just can help you figure out what segment of aviation is really it for you. And there's a ton of opportunities.
Right.
It's just up for you to decide which one you want to go to. But if we just immediately take that first step and then roll into a flight school somewhere, you might even miss out. Say you know that you're going to become a pilot, but you might think, oh, I'm going to go the 121 route. Where, flying cargo in Alaska might be the thing that really piques your interest.
Exactly.
Do aerial fighter fighting might be the thing that piques your interest. Flying air shows might be the thing that piques your interest. All of it might be a professional pilot, but a different kind of category or class of it.
Right. And that's exactly the point. And so a lot of our students, they just they want to be a pilot, so they
Yeah.
started their school here. And so let's say someone goes to a Part 141 school where they get all the necessary ratings to begin to build hours and maybe eventually get an ATP or something like that, or at least fly a jet. Uh, is there, let's say you go through this sort of program, what kind of trajectory does that give you? Not necessarily, potential, but does it kind of say, oh, I can do these jobs, and these jobs only? What does that kind of look like?
I think that, going to a 141 school,
Mhm.
just like here at Thrust,
Mhm.
gives you some standardization that I think is really important, especially if you want to go to a large corporate flight department.
Uh-huh.
But even if that's not the case, and when I say flight department, that could be
Mhm.
121 or in business aviation,
Mhm.
91 or 135.
Mhm.
But in addition to that standardization, I think that it's really important because it teaches you the right way, the professional, the
Mhm.
safe way of flying,
Mhm.
which sometimes you might miss out on a Part 61 school.
Mhm.
So if you have the resources to be able to do a 141 school,
Mhm.
I highly recommend it because I think it provides a more structured environment
Mhm.
for learning complex situations for
Mhm.
people. And I think that's good to create a standard safety level.
Mhm.
But when you do go to the 141 program, I think it prepares you for any type of flying job out there. I
Mhm.
don't think it really pigeonholes you into only flying for the airlines. I think it might like actually get you to whatever segment of professional flying you want faster,
Mhm.
safer, and in a more structured environment. So
Yeah, and I asked that because it is a commitment. So it's something that you should be comfortable making if you're
yeah,
going to make that commitment, and it's very expensive.
yeah,
It is very expensive. So it's something that I think some people are like, oh, should I look into more things? Maybe it's up
yeah.
to you. But there is a lot of things out there.
You
So
should definitely be educated before you go
yeah,
to 141 or 61 school,
yeah.
but that's where getting involved inside of the community kind of can help you out
Hmm.
in the very early stages. Because if you talk to people and you learn a little bit more about, this is kind of where I think that I'm going to, there's going to be other people inside of the industry that might be able to give you some advice or some experiences or connect you with somebody else. And then again, hopefully you'll be able to check out Aviation Start to figure out some additional resources that might be there. But in general, I think going to a 141 school will prepare you for whatever type of professional flying that you want. You
Hmm.
just have to be open to what other opportunities exist outside of flying for the airlines.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Well, um, before we go, I want to make a few statements there. So Thrust is going to be known at, well, we were Thrust Light this whole time. We're going to be going by Thrust.
Okay.
We are officially an aviation company, not just a pilot school. We also have an AMT school, and we've been opening it up next door to all of our pilot schools. The idea is that we need AMTs.
Yeah.
And so what greater they can start to take a look at our planes and learn more about them, and then get licensed with their airframe and power plant, and we can have more AMTs that we've trained.
And I love the fact that
Yeah.
you bring that up because you're a perfect example of what we've been talking about.
Hmm.
When you ask the question about, is there really a need for it? Thrust is a perfect example that illustrates, yeah, there's a real need that people just don't realize actually exists.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, it's going to get worse for the industry overall. But then again, for everybody that wants to enter the industry,
Hmm.
it's the opportunity of a lifetime.
Absolutely. And I've seen that with our school over at the AMT. They are flourishing.
Yeah.
We fill the classes up. They're even easier to fill up,
Yeah.
honestly. And I think
Yeah.
the demand is, if I'm
It's
not
higher.
mistaken, you're making it sound like it's even higher.
It's higher.
Yeah. So and then very important,
Yeah.
obviously. So I guess I just bring that up because I'd like people to understand that we have a lot of opportunities here, and if you're interested, of course, reach out to us. But Aviation Start is a great place to explore the industry and all the different opportunities that help you get into the industry. So I'm gonna go on there later and mess around with it just to kind of see what you've kind of updated, because the first time we talked, it was only maybe a month or two old or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And so
Very early stages.
yeah,
This is like version 1.3.
yeah,
I can't wait to show you like version 3.0,
I can't
and
wait.
then you'll be able to see some real solid opportunities and
Yeah.
guidance from, sitting inside of a desk in high school or sitting beside or behind your desk in a corporate job,
Mhm.
and then realizing how to go from being there to that dream career inside of aviation.
Exactly. Well, I have to say thank you for joining us. I feel like if I wanted to, I could talk to you all day and try to learn so much more. But I don't think that we're gonna do like a 5 hour podcast or anything. So thank you, Jamail, again for joining us. I think maybe we'll have you on it again, and next time around we'll kind of break some stuff down to what we want to really talk about. I just really like having these natural high level conversations. So until next time, thank you for joining us. Thank you guys for listening. If you still are, I'm assuming that you're enjoying it. So like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us out. And we'll see you on the next episode of Pilots Say What, where we get to hear what pilots have to say.